Search how to activate your stem cells, and you will drown in supplements, clinics in Mexico charging thousands of dollars, and pills promising to turn back your biological clock. Almost all of it is selling you the same idea, that you need to boost your stem cells, wake them up, supercharge them. And here is what almost nobody tells you. After 65, you still have most of the stem cells you had at 25. They did not disappear. They are not the problem. The problem is the neighborhood they live in. Your stem cells are surrounded by what scientists call zombie cells. Cells that should have died but did not, and instead sit there pumping out a toxic chemical fog that shuts your healthy stem cells down. You cannot boost your way out of that. You can pour every supplement on Earth into a stem cell that is being poisoned by its neighbors, and it will still underperform. The lever that actually works is not boosting, it is clearing. I'm Dr. Marc Jones. Dr. Marc. This channel is built for adults in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who refuse to accept that decline is inevitable. Let me give you something concrete right at the start. A landmark review published in 2021 in the Journal of Internal Medicine from the Mayo Clinic group that pioneered this field laid out the mechanism in plain terms. Senescent cells develop what is called a senescence-associated secretory phenotype, a robust chemical broadcast which, and I am quoting the mechanism here, inhibits stem cell function and disrupts tissue homeostasis while increasing the chronic inflammation researchers call inflammaging. Read that again. The senescent cells inhibit your stem cells. Your repair crew is not lazy. It is being actively suppressed by toxic neighbors. The system profits when you stay sick, not when you get better. Your next checkup will not measure your senescent cell burden. There is no billing code for it. The 15-minute visit will tell you that fatigue and slow healing are just aging, and never mention that the mechanism underneath is reversible. Subscribe to Dr. Marc Jones, hit like, and tell me in the comments which decade of life you are in. Your 50s, 60s, 70s. That tells me exactly who this channel is reaching. Let me explain what is actually happening, because once you understand it, the whole supplement industry looks different. Picture a renovation crew trying to work in a building. Your stem cells are the skilled workers, trained, ready, waiting to repair damage. But the building is crowded with retired workers who refuse to leave. They do not just stand around. They shout constantly, issuing contradictory orders, creating so much noise and confusion that the active crew cannot do their jobs. That is exactly what senescent cells do. These are cells that accumulated enough damage that they should have undergone programmed cell death. But they got stuck. They stopped dividing, but they refused to die. And in that stuck state, they secrete a cocktail of inflammatory signals, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and a dozen others. Individually, those signals are normal, but when senescent cells pile up faster than your immune system can clear them, which is exactly what happens after 60, those signals become a chronic toxic fog, and that fog settles over the tiny microenvironment where your stem cells live, a place researchers call the stem cell niche. Here is the insight that changes everything. Stem cell function is not mainly about the stem cells themselves. It is about the neighborhood. A healthy stem cell dropped into a toxic niche will underperform. A struggling stem cell placed into a clean niche can recover. So the question is not, how do I boost my stem cells? The question is, how do I clean the neighborhood? Here is where the inversion gets sharp, and where it should change what you actually do. The entire consumer longevity industry is built on the word boost. Boost your NAD, boost your stem cells, boost your mitochondria. But the research points the other direction. In animal studies, when scientists used drugs to selectively kill senescent cells, drugs called senolytics, and cleared those toxic neighbors out, tissue health was restored, age-related conditions were delayed, physical function improved, and in some studies, lifespan was extended. They did not add anything to the stem cells. They subtracted the cells that were poisoning them. Now, I need to be careful and precise here because this is exactly where most health channels go wrong. The senolytic drugs in those studies, one of them is a chemotherapy agent, are not something you should ever source on your own. They require strict medical supervision. I am not telling you to buy anything. What I am telling you is the principle. The burden of toxic senescent cells is not fixed, it is reducible. And the question that matters for you and me, today, without a prescription, is whether there is an accessible, free way to lower that burden. There is. And it is almost insultingly ordinary. If this is useful, subscribe to Dr. Marc Jones right now and tell me in the comments which decade of life you are in. Your 50s, 60s, 70s? That tells me exactly who this channel is reaching and which protocols to prioritize next. Share this video with anyone in your life who is serious about their next 30 healthy years. Before I go further, I need to name the symptoms that mean you stop watching and see a doctor, because they can signal something other than ordinary aging. Progressive extreme fatigue with no clear cause. Recurring infections that do not resolve. Unintentional weight loss of more than 5% over 6 months. Unexplained bruising or bleeding. Persistently swollen lymph nodes. Any one of those needs a physician promptly? They can indicate underlying conditions that have nothing to do with what we are discussing. Stop watching and make the appointment. If what you have instead is the ordinary slow erosion, healing that takes longer than it used to, muscle that fades despite your habits, recovery that drags, that is exactly what I am about to address. Now let me walk you through the most accessible way to clear senescent cells and the science behind why it works. The single most validated intervention is not a supplement. It is exercise, and not for the reason you think. We have known exercise is good for you forever. What is new is the mechanism. A first-in-human study published in 2021 in Aging Cell by England and colleagues took older adults through a 12-week structured exercise program of strength and endurance training and measured the molecular markers of senescence directly in their immune cells. The result was striking. The key senescence markers, P16, P21, CGAS, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, were significantly lowered in the participants' T cells. The circulating concentrations of multiple senescence-related proteins dropped. And here is the most useful part. The participants whose senescent burden dropped the most were the same ones whose physical function improved the most. Exercise was not just making them fitter. It was measurably clearing the toxic cell burden that suppresses stem cell function. This is the first human evidence that you can lower senescent cell load with nothing but structured movement. The second factor is the type and dose of that movement. The evidence points to a combination: moderate aerobic exercise, the kind where you can hold a conversation but you are working, for around 150 minutes a week, plus resistance training 2 to 3 times a week. The aerobic work reprograms the inflammatory landscape across multiple tissues. The resistance work directly wakes up the muscle stem cells that fall into deep dormancy with age. You need both. The third factor is consistency over intensity. Senescent cell clearance is not a one-workout event. The immune cells that identify and remove zombie cells respond to a sustained signal, not a single heroic session followed by 2 weeks on the couch. Steady, repeated movement keeps the cleanup crew active. The fourth factor is the anti-inflammatory diet that supports the same pathway. The Mediterranean-style pattern, extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish, cruciferous vegetables, and berries, consistently associates with lower inflammatory markers. Berries in particular contain a compound called fisetin that has shown weak but real senescent clearing activity in preclinical models. I want to be honest, eating blueberries is not the same as a clinical senolytic drug, but the dietary pattern lowers the ambient inflammatory fog, and that is real. The fifth factor is sleep and stress, because both directly drive senescent accumulation. Chronic short sleep, under 6 hours, is associated with accelerated cellular senescence. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which feeds the same inflammatory cascade. Protecting 7 to 9 hours of consistent sleep and managing stress through daily breathwork or social connection is not a soft wellness suggestion. It directly lowers the toxic load on your stem cell niche. Now, the protocol. 3 steps you start this week. And notice not one of them is a supplement you have to buy. Step 1. Build the clearance engine. 150 minutes a week of moderate aerobic movement you can sustain a conversation through. plus resistance training 2 or 3 times a week. This is the single most validated way to lower senescent cell burden in humans. Start below what you think you can do and build gradually. Step 2. Lower the inflammatory fog with food. Shift toward the Mediterranean pattern. Olive oil, fatty fish, cruciferous vegetables, a daily handful of berries. You are not buying a senolytic. You are lowering the chronic inflammation that lets senescent cells dominate. Step 3. Protect the cleanup window. 7 to 9 hours of consistent sleep and a daily 10-minute stress-down practice. Breathwork, a walk, real social contact. Sleep and stress control are when your immune system does its senescent cell housekeeping. I worked with a 70-year-old retired nurse named Margaret, who had spent a small fortune on stem cell supplements and an NAD precursor with nothing to show for it. We stopped the supplements entirely, built a walking plus resistance routine, shifted her diet toward the anti-inflammatory pattern, and protected her sleep. She did not boost a single thing. Within 3 months, her energy returned and her recovery from activity sped up, because for the first time she was clearing the neighborhood instead of pouring money into cells that were being suppressed. How old are you right now? Drop your decade in the comments, your 50s, 60s, 70s. Your age changes how heavy your senescent burden has become and how much of it the accessible interventions can lower. Knowing the demographic of who is watching changes what I research next. Here is what to do this week. 3 steps. 1. 150 minutes of moderate aerobic movement plus resistance training twice. The most validated senescent clearing intervention there is. 2. Shift toward the anti-inflammatory Mediterranean pattern to lower the fog. 3. Protect 7 to 9 hours of sleep and a daily stress-down practice so your immune system can do its cleanup. Stop trying to boost cells that are being poisoned. Clear the poison first. Your stem cells are not gone, and they are not waiting for a deadline. There is no cutoff after which this stops working. Even in your 70s and 80s, lowering the toxic burden lets the repair crew you already have go back to work. I'm Dr. Marc Jones, and there is no billing code for 10 minutes of senescent cell biology in a standard appointment. The healthcare system generates revenue from prescriptions and procedures, not from patients who solve their problems at home with correct information. That is exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe to Dr. Marc Jones and hit like. Watch this next. The truth about NAD and NMN supplements after 50. Link on screen right now. Science first. Protocol second. What this means for your next 30 years. Always. This is Dr. Marc Jones. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Your future self is watching.